cleaning up into a new level.
It was funny because did you see it?
I did not, but I'm going to watch it now.
You gotta watch it, go to the end.
Yeah. Go to the end.
They had 5 panelists and everybody was like, and then, well, I mean, it wasn't bad, but then all of a sudden I started showing the slides and I started talking and I was like, hey, can you shut the lights off so we can see the screen? You know, it was like, so they actually wanted to see the pictures and because they started.
What was the subject of the presentation?
Yeah.
It's all about water.
What's to do with it?
It was a Camden can thing.
Yeah, it's all about climate change and I went through all the different parts of the infrastructure that I'm responsible for and how water's affected them. And talked about, you know, the reality of the situation that we're always talking about sea level rise, but the reality is inland flooding is probably a bigger issue in our region.
Yeah.
And you need to think about that aspect of it because nobody's thinking of it. They're like, oh, you know, climate change is just this, but it's really everything.
Let's talk about the last rainstorm we had and what Sunday River looked like.
Well, I just gave that presentation.
And that's an example because there's plenty of footage on it.
I said the genie's out of the bottle, and I says I don't want to break the news to anybody here, but this is happening now, and you know now it's all about how are we going to adjust to it, and what are we going to do to kind of adapt.
And I think that the thing that people don't necessarily recognize, and unless it's happening kind of in their neighborhood or on their street, and a good example of this that you know we all see, I certainly see every day, is Robinson Drive in Rockport, and I'm not pointing, but that was a storm from 3 years ago. That was an October storm of 21.
Still not fixed.
And it's had multiple emergency fixes.
Yeah.
None of which are holding, by the way, and they're holding enough to be legally stable and safe, but they're not long-term fixes. And of course you have to do something. It's one way in, one way out, and there's no one fault, but when you're dealing with federal funds and you're dealing with, you know, trying to like, you know, back into, you know, fixing a piece of infrastructure, as we all know, like you put money in for maintenance, but you don't put, you know, so much money in for enormous emergency fixes, right? And so we're dealing with what that town's dealing with 2.5 years out, and it's still not done. So I think we have to like recognize that when we can get funds for changing culverts or smaller, you know, to have money available to do this or to stay ahead of it, knowing that it's already undersized or knowing that this particular spot fails every large rainstorm, like we as a town would be, you know, advised to try to get ahead of some of this catastrophic situation.
It's interesting because people that do infrastructure don't always understand this aspect of it. They're like, all right, let's put this drainage in, and they always want to put the smaller stuff in because it's easier. And really,
better to over-engineer something
you have to make it bigger. Everything has to be a little larger now.
Yeah.
Like when you put a basin in, there's an F basin, which is a little square one, and it's only 4 feet high, and they love those because
and they're easy to do, right? You can put in with most machinery.
Then what you should be putting in is like a large barrel catch basin that's really difficult to put in and takes 3 times as long. So it's changing the culture too of the infrastructure. So you're dealing with that aspect on the ground, and you need somebody that can, you know, that understands what's going on, but at the same time is able to change the culture of how you improve it. Because if you don't do that, you're going to end up with small infrastructure improvements that aren't capable of
sort of quick fixes, but not long-term fixes.
Yeah. Are you able to find contractors that understand that and can work to that?
We're doing our own stuff.
Yeah.
So we just were talking about Pearl Street, and you know, he was like, oh, well, how about we just put a couple F basins on the other side? I said, no, we got to put bigger stuff in because of, you know, the increase in water. We don't want to undersize things, we want to oversize things.
And you get people to do puddles, permanent puddles in their backyards that would help them when this happens.
You mean like
rain gardens.
rain gardens?
Yes.
Well, we started with that, we meant to do that last year, and we never followed through with it, I don't think, because, I think partially because I was really busy.
You're busy, it was on my short list, but yeah, we'll talk.
But there was that one spot on, right,
Or mechanic and Oak.
yeah, right near Allison's house, I think.
Just in case you can't see, but she has, Samantha's had her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sam, I literally.
Oh, no, I just want to get in on, I have a question for David, that's all, before we
Go for
move
it.
on. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. David, just related to the commission, we need to sit down and talk about Arbor Day and Tree City applications.
I was actually thinking about that. We need to give you the information you're gonna need for the
Yeah.
report.
So what I was wondering is, would it be possible for me to have a meeting with you where we go through the application and figure out what information I need from you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
What's the best way to get on your calendar? Email you?
Yeah, just, you can text me and just say, look, I wanna,
Okay.
give me some dates that you're available, and I'll make arrangements to meet with you to go through that and get you the information you need.
Great. I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and if you can have the stuff ahead of time and email it to me too, that way I can give you some of it that might take, you know what I mean? That might take some putting together.
Definitely. Okay.
So we can kind of be efficient.
Yep. I like it.
And then I guess that was all.
Can I ask you a question which is sort of related? You were talking about catch basins, and all the residential streets and others have these catch basins, and I was wondering, is it a problem for people when people let stuff, leaves and things like build up on them? And
so those are like immediate problems, and then the system gets blinded off with leaves. That just makes.
Right, so that's why I was thinking, like, I have, one time you guys were cleaning the catch basins, and a neighbor of mine happens to always park, there's one friend's house, he parks on top of it all the time. So it's always filled. I go by and clean it regularly, but I'm just wondering, like, can we make it a.
Adopt a catch basin thing is what we're.
Or a rule that, that. the
Like have a
neighborhood
perimeter where
responsible.
you can't park over it, so to speak?
Yeah, or
maybe,
some
Parking
rules
lot's
about
not a
catch basins.
problem.
Yeah.
So that people are, like, if it be the person, if it's in front of their house, or a neighborhood or something, that fine if you let it build up with leaves or something, just so people make an awareness that they need to clean it up. I'm cleaning it all the time, but
Yeah,
it's hard because he's parked there all the time.
I mean, maybe you guys have some suggestions, but this is what I kind of see sometimes as the problem is that some people move into town and they think that, I pay taxes, that's Public Works' job to clean all the catch basins off, which is almost unrealistic that you could think we could clean every catch basin off before every storm.
Right.
So,
What about just a public service, a little, just like, what if we as the Conservation Commission just said, hey, snow and ice impact our water flow almost more.
oh, yeah, so
ways, but
the leaves are blinding off
if-
the catch basin, then
right,
it
if
freezes.
you can,
Now you've got ice.
if you live near one or you happen to be going by and have a minute to.
Yeah, I think about this all the time, every time I walk down the hill,
Right.
there's
Could just be a PSA or.
Yeah, but
you know,
every
just
time
do
it
it
rains, it
article
happens,
just a
that's the
little
crazy
few
thing.
images, like,
Yeah.
we want this, not that, or do you know what this can do kind of thing? I mean,
I
look
agree.
at Bayview's, a couple of spots on Bayview that.
And even
maybe
if they
a
let
little
us
muddy.
know where the bad spots are, that they're ones that they can't clean off because it's just too much of it there, we can do those, but to think that we can go to every catch, so what we do when it rains is we send people out and they drive around, they look for where it's accumulating, and then they just clear the leaves off.
I mean, I could clear 2 every time I walk down there, not every time,
Yeah,
but
but-
I just put it over, I mean, people wouldn't like where I put it, but.
That's why Public Works don't like
They-
trees. It's true, I mean, because Rick hated trees because of the leaves.
Just didn't like them right in town.
Right, he likes them in the woods.
Yeah.
But not in town, because they create a huge problem in town.
Yeah.
So to have nice trees in the urban area, you need to have a culture of people that understand that to have these trees, we also have to share in with the pain of maybe cleaning out the catch basin in front of their house.
Well, I try to clear my neighbor's leaves because they're really my leaves. And then I compost them, but we had half again as much leaves this year than we've ever had. And I have talked to people and they've talked to me about how much more. And they think it's because there was so much rain, and I think it's because the CO2 level is higher, because last year was heavier too. Not as much as this year.
I think that, I'm gonna believe that most people would be helpful with this.
I think so.
I think most people, because that's generally the rule of thumb in town here, is that 75% of the people are gonna be cooperative with this.
And there
So
are a lot of walkers now because of
Yeah.
dogs.
Yes.
maybe we can do a text alert that says, hey,
I want a little movie,
know.
a comic movie, and I know Andy O'Brien, who used to be the editor
Mhm.
of Free Press, and his wife makes cartoon movies, and he puts voices to them with all his main friends. They're screechingly funny, and he's done stuff about sea rise. I want to commission them, get the money somehow, and do a puddle piece of what you were describing, and then every time you encounter this with new people, you say, we have something for you to watch. And it shows how the water behaves. You can even have them coming out and being upset about it.
I would never know how to identify, I mean, just like, it's something that where I'm like, oh, I'd love to, do you need, I just don't know. I didn't know if there was any sort of like quarterly, like, okay, it's whatever, it's the
Where do you-
whatever Thursday.
where
Be
do
a
you
perfect
live?
topic for a newsletter. That's,
Yes.
Where do you live?
Newsletter.
What street do you
On Free
live?
Street,
So if you go on, which end?
the one closer to
Elm Street?
Mechanic,
Okay.
right at the base of Pearl Street. Big white house with 2 apartments.
Oh, okay. I might have talked
And
to
now
you.
everyone knows.
I might have talked to your husband.
are
married?
they the people?
Yeah, oh, okay. Is it going, all right, doesn't
Is that
matter.
the driveway?
But that's
It's
a
literally like at the base of Pearl
Oh,
Street, like right.
Oh, right
There-
across
there's
the
a
street
bit
of Pearl
of
Street?
erosion.
Yes,
Yes, you
that's
drive
a bad
into our
spot.
house, it is a bad
That's a
spot.
bad, that's one of the worst
Erosion
spots.
control issues there.
Yeah,
Because that gets washed out, so we're gonna be doing
Yeah,
some work in
maybe.
there, but like, that's a good area, like that catch basin right there, if that's got leaves in it, it's going right into your yard,
Yeah,
because the water's just coming down Pearl
Yeah.
Street. It shouldn't as much now, because we just put in the drainage, but it's still going to when it rains 2 or
It's
3
gotta
inches.
That little stream is the topic of my column that'll come out this week, actually.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah, I mean,
If they
it's,
print it, yeah.
it's just ignorance, it's like, I don't know what a catch basin, like, I'm
Yeah, it's-
thinking many people
it's a matter of
probably
taking a
don't.
Oh,
leaf rake
absolutely.
and just raking it off the top
Yeah.
and throwing them in the woods, or putting them in a
Yeah,
bag. and-
compost
Yeah.
pile,
Yeah.
but yeah.
We're also tenants, so we're not like,
Right.
we're not the landlords,
Right.
so, and our landlords are not local, so that's like a whole other thing, but in terms of like ways to be involved, like if there was like I said, like a quarterly cleanup day, I'd totally do that. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, maybe we can do a public awareness thing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
doing some sort of like
Yeah.
article, you know.
Maybe
something
the
that
Conservation
could be
Commission could
printed.
just do its own
I
newsletter
think
and
it's
forget
part of
about the
taking care
town,
of
you know, just not sit around and wait.
No, yeah, I actually wasn't necessarily thinking it would just write.
No,
an
no,
article
because we've been
and
talking
send it.
about,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, send it.
Beatty's been asking for this for about 30 years, and,
It's really tough, because what happens is that you think you've cleaned up most of them, and then if the wind blows, and the leaves get loose, and then the wind blows them into the road, and then it rains, and then they all collect there at the catch basin, because it's a drain. It's like the drain is
It's
sinking.
You know what I could do
Yeah.
on Washington Street? I could move that clump just downhill.
But then it goes to the next catch basin.
But it would take a long time and a much bigger storm. It
Yeah,
would sit there, it would try to get to the next one, but it wouldn't succeed for a while.
can it just go on the,
on the other side of the sidewalk.
yeah,
I know, it's just, I think the owner might not like that clump, but I could get away with
Then tell
that
them to
easily.
put it out.
Yeah.
Put it
Put
away.
it in the middle of the night. Just kidding, I'm kidding.
Anyway, we could do a
Okay,
public awareness
but-
thing, right?
But that's a great idea, and I mean,
Yeah, 'cause it would
it is
help.
unrealistic to think that any public works department has the staff to monitor and maintain all of them between every storm. That's probably slightly unrealistic.
And it's what causes a lot of the flooding, to be honest with you, sometimes, is that the drains are just.
Well, and undersized things, well, that's the sediment erosion, but yeah,
Right.
so.
I will
Yeah.
take responsibility for 2 blocks of Washington.
so there's a whole, with the GIS and getting, the main thing, right now, we're in the middle of starting the budget process. So the budget committee is going to be meeting, and we're doing it a little differently this year. So on January 25th is going to be a meeting of the budget committee where all the other committees are invited to come and pitch or advocate for budget items that they think are important. And getting back to the GIS topic, the best way for us to be able to keep making progress there is to have a robust GIS budget. And that connects to our conversation right now, because the stormwater app, which if anybody wants to stick around today, I could, I've been doing a fair amount with it lately, and it's working well, so I can teach anybody how to use that. But what we have right now is just something basically for people that have been trained to use it. But other towns that really invest in GIS, they have this whole like adopt a catch basin for, app that they deploy that encourages the, it does a little ArcGIS story map and teaches people about this is how catch basins get blocked and this is why it's important to clear them off. And you go on and you adopt a certain one, you can mark off that it's been cleaned. We already have that for the contractor that Dave hires to do the, there are two types of catch basin cleaning. One is the actual sediment removal in the basin. And you're saying, yeah, but I was thinking maybe Samantha, she was just saying, I didn't fully realize this either, though I was so interested in water and how it worked. It was only a couple of years ago that I realized that, that basin, it's not just a pipe in and a pipe out. It actually has this lower part that's designed to catch the, and Rebecca's like, I can't believe those people are
No.
But it, it catches some of the solids settle out and it fills up. And so it is a small sort of pollution control device as well. So already the company that Dave hires to do that, they have a separate access to the app, and they go on there and they report the condition of them, how much sediment was in each one. And I couldn't believe it when I went to look the other day. I was trying to figure out where this water was going from Pearl Street, and there wasn't, at first I didn't think there was a picture of this catch basin, and then we realized if you look at the catch basin inspection this year, this company that Dave hired had done what they were supposed to do, and you could see the picture that they had taken of this catch basin in somebody's yard. Anyway, so that's working really well, but we can't do it without, we could, but CAI has been really good. So making sure that we have money in the budget for those types of projects, they've been really good also at they'll train, if we give them all the information, they can put it into an ArcGIS story that trains people and all along the line of communication. So January 25th, should be, thinking about what we want to make sure that there's money in the budget for. That would be a good time also to mention that some of the previous Conservation Commission initiatives, like preparing for the Emerald Ash Borer and making sure that, that tree fine money is going into a reserve account for trees and things like that.
When is that meeting? What time?
I think it's probably at like 6 around the evening kind of.
That's fine.
Yeah, because people are looking at the budget, and I have a little explanation in there, and I said I'm going to be trying to plant, I think I said 35 or 40 trees this year. And, so they could say, well, do we need to do that many, or do we really need to plant more trees? There could be those questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite possible.
Yeah, so it would be a good time for you guys just to possibly say this is, how the tree app works and things like that. And then other thing I was going to show you guys just real quick. I think we should try to come up with more opportunities to go out in the field. And the Conservation Commission in past years has like 20 years ago would go and monitor certain spots like public access points and natural areas to kind of check on them. But let's see here. I figured I would just show you guys, as we're talking about the the piers and the seawall, you know, we've been talking about it as like the pier moratorium discussion, but what the planning board is proposing to do is beyond just piers, they're looking at regulating or prohibiting seawalls and bulkheads too. And that's, whether or not they're looking at this like riprap kind of stuff or not is a little unclear, but we're slowly seeing all of Camden Harbor turning into an armored shoreline. And lots of other places have been facing this even more. And so they're further ahead of us because they've really lost their beaches. But, you know, this is just Sherman's Cove, for instance. I'm standing at the Marine Ave harbor access point. And what's, you know, it's really interesting to watch as the waves, you know, this is without sea level rise, like another foot or two of sea level rise. But you can see as the waves come in, they really, they build up steam along this armored shoreline. And instead of just when it hits like an irregular shoreline, like ledge and sand and all that, it kind of breaks all up. This, you can see the waves form way back over by like Eaton Point. And what it does, what some of these state geology conferences and stuff I've been to recently have explained, is it takes all that energy and it directs it first of all sideways to different properties, but then also downward. And so it creates this hollowing effect here, and it pulls away. Sherman's Cove is the only part of Camden Harbor that hasn't been dredged before, so it like historically have really sandy beaches. This is all like eroding coastal bluff, and so the source of sediment, what has been explained to me that I really didn't understand at first, the major source of sediment for Sherman's Cove, in addition to some of the smaller rivers going down in there, is the eroding bluff. And so when you stop all erosion on these bluffs, you've stopped like the source of sand. And then once you have these walls, so it cuts that off, but then it also has this additional wave effect that pulls what sand is there away. The same thing's happening at Lake Beach. But in a lot of these places, there's not even a structure that these walls are necessarily protecting. And you see other places, what happens is they, as in places where it gets closer and closer to houses, then instead of just having these walls, they do have these bulkheads that then go out even more into the intertidal zone. And if we don't do something and stop more of this, all we're doing is encouraging more development really close to the shore, and then creating more of a future need. This here is the Harbor Road public access point. And so I'm taking this from the Marine Ave public access point. This is the pier that was just built, the brand new wall that was just built. So, this is all with like the latest engineering. They were like, oh, it'll be fine. Completely boxed pedestrian access. It's just,
what was to the other side of that new pier, Allison? That looked like rock along, really far up the hillside there? Is that?
That's somebody else's riprap shoreline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's private. So it's private property where it's riprapped, and then that's public property, which is where a stream is, and that's public access to the shore, which is not accessible to, not terribly accessible to all, but it's there. And and it's about as minimal a vegetated buffer along freshwater access, an outlet, as one could get. And then I think another conversation in this particular visual is one of many, 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 so it's not finger pointing, but the new pier that went in, they used some loose ruling or gray areas to clear visual from one end to the other of their property rather than to clear what was necessary to get to their shore. And there's already provisions in place where you can cut tops of trees and leave the vegetation in place and let it resprout. Like, there's lots of ways to maintain, but there's absolutely no reason to have had, and all that exposed shoreline, all that is just going to create more and more erosion points, both from the waves and from the downslope.
Which helps,
where
was it?
it's off of Harbor Road.
Yeah, I would say there, like,
And
the goal
it's
of,
just many, many examples. It's sort of, it's how people build houses, and whether it's from a contracting standpoint or a landowner standpoint, or nobody's really thinking about it standpoint. It's not a, it's a sort of standard operating practice. You want to build a house, or you want to build a pier, you want to build something, clear as much away as possible, and then figure out what you're going to do. It's like, they should be reverse engineering that. It should be, where does it need to go? How much actually needs to be cleared? Where can you open things up to keep a view? How are you going to use and move through the space? But it's this sort of mentality that we have collectively as society. It's like, clear it all, get everything out of the way, so to speak, and then put stuff back. You know, I mean, from a landscape design and an ecology standpoint, it's completely backwards, because you've just taken away tens of thousands of dollars worth of vegetation and you know, and sediment erosion control and, you know, wildlife habitat and so on and so forth.
When they disrupted the environment.
Yeah, and so then you get these, you know, the builder's done, the contractor's done, the driveway person's of this, that, and the other thing's done, or the, you know, or now the pier is in, and now they'll say, it's a little bare on that landscape, maybe we could put some junipers back in, or maybe we could add some, you know, and you're like, you just took all the vegetation away, or you just created the erosion problem. There was no erosion problem prior to that, so it's...
well, the reason they got away with that is actually because of erosion control. So there's something that allows them to do more if they can, and I saw all the application stuff. And in addition to, for the, what's the national, the NERPA permit, they had to do the bank stabilization for the pier and for that. And they said there was existing erosion, and that was just a box that they could check, basically, that allowed them to do more, to, you know, remove a bunch of vegetation in order to fix existing erosion. But I would question whether they're, you know, not all erosion is bad, that the eroding of that shoreline is what creates a beach. So with sea level rise, if that shoreline isn't allowed to migrate inward, we lose the beach. And so,
but that could still happen with
Now listen, how
with what?
do these ideas get into, how can we affect change so that these ideas, like you were saying, don't happen in the future? Is it by either getting the Conservation Commission involved in what rules are going to be? Is it just who makes these decisions about going through the planning board, so that they can't just check a box and say no, it has to be approved. You said there's erosion, okay, that has to be approved by the.
Yeah, so most of that, the way these permits.
In a town, I'm not talking about the state, I'm talking about the town.
The problem is that the permits go to the state, and then the state approval gets used as, usually as saying, well, the state signed off on this, and they have this whole process. Well, if you talk to the people that are doing the permits at the state, and I talked to a bunch of them at this conference where I presented all of this stuff, and I pulled up the applications, and they were all kind of roaring with laughter, like, because they're the ones that review this, and they're like, they don't have the resources to go out. I guess the department tried to buy a drone, and they were told that they couldn't. So they have to, you know, they have to rely on like the 2011 Google imagery that they can find. So unless you get somebody opposing the permit, it doesn't really, they don't have the resources to fact check everything. So one of the things it said on this most recent pier application was that it was not within a quarter mile of a public access point or a place frequented by the public. Well, that's wrong.
That's totally.
And to answer your question about how to prevent it, it's, the town can establish rules. So they're two things, like the state, you can impact the state's decisions by, right now they're redoing the coastal sand dune maps, for instance. What the state geologist told me is that there should be a rule, just like there's a rule that you can't have seawalls in the coastal sand dune system, there should be a rule about not having seawalls on coastal bluffs. So probably the one thing to do, especially now the planning board's looking at it right now, would be to say, take some of that same language and say, we should do, if you're concerned about across the board banning seawalls, then, and because I don't know if anybody listened to that meeting that they just had, but it's like they want to have criteria. So, okay, the criteria can
Which
be.
meeting, the one in December?
The one we were both at.
Yeah.
That one, okay.
So if they need criteria, then sometimes it's just providing the language. We would suggest that that no new seawalls be constructed in areas designated as coastal bluffs, that no new piers be erected within a quarter mile of a public access point, because that's exact language that the state permit uses. They asked those questions, so they, but it's really hard because these people are really litigious.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is you can get these in the town rules, so that they can't be as abused, and it's like, hey, this is the rules of the town, too bad.
If you look at these, I don't know if you can see these, this is right next to the yacht club here, these houses, and this one is the one that's gonna rebuild their pier, but if you think, because the code enforcement officer turned them down and the select board overruled the code enforcement officer. Because, they get these lawyers that are really good and intimidating, and they kind of, unless you're really thinking about it a lot and you have like experience of being able to see where these things have been turned down, you can't really, it's hard to fight them. They said that the pier was only half damaged because they counted the house. They said the pier really starts back at the back of the house. So it's amazing to see, like, over here, the waves don't cause nearly so much problem. And some of these people, they've had these seawalls for like a really long time, before we knew that they were kind of bad.
They had woods there, they didn't have grass.
But so these, you think about, what is the plan? If are we gonna allow bulkheads to be built here up higher than, these houses?
It's never been built there.
If we're gonna create rules that allow these houses to be safe, then we're giving up, we're basically saying that we don't need to have an actual shoreline anymore. And there's gotta be, that's why they're pushing, the managed retreat option in so many places. But we're at the point in Camden where there aren't that many houses that are just like this yet. So it'll be politically difficult right now to say, okay, we're not gonna allow like an additional bulkhead wall to be built out here higher than the actual house. That's not gonna be allowed. And in 20 years, when these people wanna do it, it's gonna be, there's gonna be some pushback, but it's not gonna be anywhere near as bad as if we let people keep building more and more and more and more and more, and then they're gonna have even more that they need to protect. And then the fight is gonna be, you're gonna be asking people to give up even more. So I think the planning board should be really supported in their.
You need to tax the money at the top, so they can't afford to do it.
Right, that's the thing. It's right now, these properties are still worth so much money. Nothing triggers, say, like, this house, every single storm, something falls off of it.
Thanks for coming.
Sorry, I made an appointment at once.
It's okay, we'll be in touch.
See you, Beanie.
I'd love to get minutes if you put me on the list.
Anyway, so I don't think it's likely that the planning board's gonna take this up again anytime soon, and that we should just try to support what they're doing, because the language that they had initially proposed language that would say no bulkheads, piers, seawalls, various things. And then Jeremy suggested that they add something in there that says, unless it's like to protect a structure that's in danger. And I think we should look at that carefully and say, okay, well, are there areas of our harbor where we could say that that type of structure is going to be permitted? Like maybe the inner harbor. You could say, all right, we're going to this like heavily, the inner harbor starts at the yacht club here. That we recognize that sea level rise is going to create the need for a lot of structural adaptation, and that some of these hard solutions. But for certainly the coastal harbor, that and probably the outer harbor, where it's mostly just at this point, you mostly have people's lawns. It would be good to say that in that area that's exposed to so much wave action and is going to continue to be impacted by more and more sea level rise, we shouldn't be allowing people to create more structures that they're just going to have to protect, because there is a negative impact on the public too, because every time that you do this, all of these places where it's been heavily built up, there's only at certain tides, there's like this tiny little beach that you can walk on, and the public has the right to access the intertidal zone for fishing, fouling, and navigation as broadly defined. So, the fact that people want to hunt for worms in the intertidal zone, and then when you build when you build all these things that in the future cause the intertidal zone to be completely eliminated, are we prepared for a Camden Harbor where everything, there's no beach in any of it, everything would look exactly like the inner harbor if we don't do something. It's already happening all along here. There's almost no beach here. And all of these structures that are built also using the NAV something or other tidal datum. And so that gets updated every 19 years, and we're at the end of it right now. So there's a new one that's going to come out where they say,
well, now the what? It's called a what?
It's like NOAA has their tidal datum, basically, which it's a 19-year average of what the mean high water, mean low water, all that stuff. So when they say like the inner harbor, the boundary between the property line and the harbor is a fixed line that's in our ordinance. And the outer harbor and the coastal harbor, it's defined as mean high water. So, and mean high water to mean low water is the intertidal zone that the public has some rights to. So the mean high water mark right now in the future, it's going to be closer, it's going to be further inland. And it's been allowed to migrate for, since time immemorial. But if all these people get to build their, they get to fix that right now, they're fixing it, first of all, at an old tidal datum. And so, anyway, it's really helpful to actually.
Is anybody talking about what to do about the yacht club? I mean,
No, I don't think so. They've been having some talks about sea level rise.
That's a good thing to do.
But, this happens, it used to be like once in a while, now it happens all the time.
Every month or.
But if we have to find some places in our harbor that we define as like, these are the areas where we're gonna allow some, natural retreat to happen. Because building up a wall in every single part of our harbor, we're looking at a future where there's nonstop construction along the shoreline, where if you see what just happened in California, they were in the middle of building this big seawall that they're always building on the West Cliff, and all of that, and it's just, all this stuff is just floating around everywhere. That's what we're gonna have, but since people don't get out here like to these outer parts all that much, it's hard to sometimes notice what's happening, and nobody tries to walk along the shoreline when, like, in the middle of a storm. So, anyway. I have this whole album of like harbor drone shots that I update all the time that's public. If, I think I sent it a while ago, but if anybody wants me to send that, just as I like try to do it at all different tides, and that's my update.
So the next thing is shoreline zoning. Geez, what should we talk about? Seems so apropos. So obviously adding let's see, I forget the precise language, because it's not adding a new ordinance, but adding to the existing ordinance, which some provisions, some that are a little bit more clear, whether we use soils, whether we use distance, whether we use, there's different measures that are, standards that can be utilized. But so the Natural Resources Protection Act isn't devoid, like that's first and foremost, but you can add another layer of protection, and you look more specifically and more closely at your own coastal or freshwater shorelines, and from that, that localized approach, add additional protections to certain areas, to whole areas, the whole coastline wind. So this is something that, since we reorganized as a Conservation Commission, has been kind of floating around there. And then, things happen. The street tree program really took off, and we were really able to help out a little more with that. And then we've had some significant storms, and other things have happened that have kind of pushed our attention elsewhere. But I think,
Can you send a link to this?
what's that?
Can you send us a link to this?
Well, that's not mine. She's asking.
I was just creating a backdrop to Rebecca's
conversation.
But yeah.
So I think that it's something that Shenley and Jeremy have advocated for, just more clarity, and then areas of real ecological concern, whether it's sediment erosion control issues, like significant drainage, really with structural support. There's some areas that are just could use a little bit more clarity, really, in how to protect or define those areas. So we've pulled some data and some shoreline zoning from Kennebunk and other towns whose names, inland and, but here in Maine and beyond, there's definitely models and language out there that we could adopt or adapt that would assist us. I would definitely like to look at Maine coastal and or New England coastal communities that have, some good functioning, and we can contact the planning board, the Conservation Commission, the code enforcement, and just say, how are they working? What would you do different, etc. But that's one project that I'd like to work on over this winter. And I don't know if we will get something of, it's possible, but might be overly ambitious to get something that could go to review by March.
Well, that means doing it now.
No, that means and then we all, two of us or three of us or whatever, a group of us, this has to be everybody, but that means, weekly meetings or check-ins with, you're looking at this and I'm looking at that, and we're pulling this together and we're sending it to Jeremy and Shenley and, for review. And because if we got something, ready, or at least a couple of things ready to add to, because these things can be added over time. They're adding to existing, or so we're not creating something totally new, but it does need to be voted on. It does need to be gone through the town process. But I do think that, given all of the storms and the conversations and the concerns, even stuff that's happening around the piers and all that, it's really shoreline zoning concerns. So I think we probably should look at that as a priority for 2024 get a few things added that will help our small staff, kind of support some of the larger causes and issues that planning board and harbor committee and just and conservation commission are already talking about, so that we can do that. So that would be one thing I would suggest there. So I'm happy to be one of those people to work on it, pull back out, and then we can just
know the resources.
collectively communicate between us, and then obviously report at the public meeting, but we can kind of work behind the scenes and then get things going. I know.
So I think there's probably like a lot of that detailed stuff that could be improved in our shoreline zoning ordinance, but there are also just some really simple things that,
Let's do those first.
like, I feel like we could just make a
No, I don't mean
request.
it in a
And it could,
bad
like,
way.
looking at every other town's ordinance and all that stuff, I'm sure there's all kinds of things I'm not aware of.
Yeah.
But it seems like a really simple thing to just say to Shenley and Jeremy, we want to add these 3 streams to the shoreline zoning ordinance. They're currently, our shoreline zoning streams are, so you've got, actually, hold on, I don't know if Samantha, let me share my screen here so that,
I think one of the concerns, and we'll have to continue to work through it, but is making sure that they, as in an additional water body, stream, river, pond, vernal pool, whatever, actually shows up on a map. And that has been a huge concern because the data, whether it's NOAA data, whether it's, GIS or Geological Service data is dated. Like some of this stuff just wasn't, the scale wasn't there. And the scale, and again, ground truthing versus what you see on the map. So there
Right.
are some obvious visible water bodies that are not so obvious and visible on.
Right, and so there's some of those, but it also just was a decision at the time when, what I was told is that at the time when shoreline zoning was passed, they were just trying to get it passed, and it was, so they didn't include, all streams or anything like that. It was like they went for the big ones. And so we've got, this is the Great Pond Zone, the River Zone. I don't think we have actually a lot of just regular natural resource protection zones. Maybe that would be one thing we could call it something different, or stream protection zones. I don't think we have many of those, but McGonagall River is in the shoreline zone. The McGonagall Lake is a great pond, so you've got that, and then just
What are the streams that you were going to say that you should at least add these?
So, because then you've got the one that's more of a stream. Springbrook is a shoreline zoning stream, but Daly Brook is the one that comes. It's the other one that comes into the harbor here. It's
the one that's behind Hardin Avenue and Rockbrook Drive?
Mm-hmm.
That should.
Well, that's not even a.
It's not even on there?
That's a tributary. The Hardin Ave thing is a tributary of Daly Brook.
Is Daly Brook the one that goes behind
Rockbrook Drive?
Yeah, on that side.
So, that one has native brook trout and all kinds of things, and hasn't suffered huge amounts of development around it.
But there's pressures there already.
There's what?
I mean, the pressure.
Absolutely. So it's an easy case that there should be, it should have a greater setback than just the minimum stuff that NERPA.
Yep.
So then.
And what was the third
one? So there's Daly Brook, then there's this whole system here, which comes underneath Rossin Ave. This one literally wasn't even on, it flows year-round like raging. It wasn't even on the USGS maps. But it goes all behind Lupin Terrace and starts from Thomas Street.
That doesn't have a name.
unnamed brook. We've been calling it the people that live back there call it the Little Mississippi, because it's.
Oh my gosh.
Which that's what I've been calling it too. And as part of the coastal resilience grant, they are mapping out that whole thing, because this is all mapped out. This comes from Mechanic Street, Mary Gardens area, down through there. So it's, this whole, certainly this part has a lot of development pressure.
Yep.
And already Rossin Ave floods when we get a bunch of rain. So there's that one that should get some protection. Another one that I would say is Belmont Brook.
Is that the Jacobs Ave?
Yes.
Yes.
So wherever they can define that as a stream, and in some places it certainly is, because there's a whole area off of, like, behind Belmont Ave where the stream really runs quite naturally for a while, and a bunch of development there would just, it just wouldn't be good. And then another one would be maybe a little bit more debatable, but that stream that comes from the bog down behind Pearl Street and then underneath Free Street, and then
And then floods my driveway.
it's not, what floods your driveway is more our improper manipulation of the stream. It's water trying to get to the stream that was taken out of it. So, and then it goes down and it floods Eric's barber shop because it can't make it into that culvert there. That one, I don't really know if that one's not as easy of a case, but then there's Great Brook. There's some stuff over here. It's Great Brook is, oh no, that's not what I mean. So this one is, this is Springbrook, and maybe that's Great Brook. Oh no, here's Great Brook. Which I think is right on the town line. That's all. I don't know as much about what protections that has over there, but certainly Daly Brook, the Little Mississippi, and Belmont Brook, just right, because all the time there are these new applications coming in, and so for every day that those aren't like better identified as
the density, the proximity to Maguntacook, the proximity to the harbor. I mean, there's just,
we're already having so much erosion there. We already have a lot of, even if you take the environmental concern out of it, you just have a lot of residents that are having flooding problems. And so as soon as you put in new houses right next to these banks, like right now, there's nothing to stop that whole stream from being riprap, and a lot more underground drainage going in, like there's a lot right at the end of that Cobb Hill where there's this pedestrian crossing there. Like that's a potential house lot. I know it seems crazy, but since there's a debatable stream with minimal protections, as long as they can stay something like, 20 feet away from it, or
75.
75 is the shoreland, but I'm pretty sure that NERPA is like 25 or something.
Yeah, each
It has to
area
be
is a little
20
different.
because they're not 75 from the road to the street, I wouldn't think.
Maybe just, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Maybe.
definitely not 75. That's 75 would solve our problems, and not solve our problems, but 75 is what Maguntacook River is. I know that. The other thing that we could consider would be, that's come up before, the state tried to force the town to do this before I was involved, but I read about it. The area behind Seabright, the Seabright Dam part of Maguntacook, that is still defined as a river. And it has the, it only has the 75-foot setback. The state tried to get us to do the 100-foot setback that Great Ponds have, because they said that essentially, we were treating that area more as a pond, like McGonagall, and
The shirt tail section or the down slope section, like
the shirt tail section.
Yeah.
That really had, since the water is slower moving and all these things, that really it should have the greater setback that ponds have. And the select board at the time was like, how can we figure out how to stop this? And there were old articles about it. And the state gave in. They were going to sue us over it. I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had been around then. But that might be another one that would just be.
What's that one called again?
The
secret,
the upper, I guess you call it Upper McGonagall River.
Okay.
Between Seabright and the
Mullineaux Road.
yeah.
So those, rather than going into the nitty gritty with Jeremy and Shenley, it could be just like, just add, add these and see if that would be something they could do a little quicker, because.
Yeah, it would be nice to have, it's fine to phase things in. It would be nice to get some momentum in.
Right. And everybody that I've ever talked to around these streams and stuff too, they're like, they always imagine that there's more protections than there are. And they're always surprised. And so, anyway.
I think we could expand it about beyond that.
I think so too. But to start with
let's
something
get
simple that would just be like.
Really tight and tangible and like very logical, and they all like relate to, a set of 2 to 4 criteria, it's very.
Right, we've mapped it out already. There's a boundary. They could create they could create their buffer from that boundary that's been defined.
And then we can wade deeper into the shorelands pieces that have a little more complexity or require a little more legal language or
the soils map and all that stuff.
Pieces. So and be better prepared for something that could go to the public in the fall. So okay, well, great. Then I got at least to a couple of you to add an old email of some potential times.
Allison, could you clarify something for me? You mentioned that the planning board probably wasn't going to take up the issue again anytime soon of shoreline armory. I'm wondering how that relates with the peer moratorium and when all that has to be finalized and whether, you know what I mean? Like, are they going to keep?
I think that, so they have it right now, and they're gonna recommend things to the select board. And they've recommended certain things, but I can't remember, they're still taking public input, or it's before us, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is it's before them and right now, and it's gonna be coming to the select board, maybe even on the next meeting. And so, but people aren't gonna realize that this is what's being talked about. So in addition to piers, as part of that whole, it's all these different types of structures.
Right, okay.
And so just to try to, I can send out stuff, but it could be on an upcoming select board agenda very soon, and should check what the agenda is for the next planning board meeting, but also just sending them anything in the interim about what you want them to be considering, or, they seem to be, on their own, really looking critically at this and in the public's interest, but there are some seriously powerful attorneys and private property owners that are really lobbying the town in the background. I'm not sure exactly to what extent, but to who it is or why, but I can just see that they're really scared of getting sued, and they get a lot, they're told, oh, it might be unconstitutional what you're doing and all this stuff, but they could just probably use a little bit of encouragement.
Could you send us their email contact information, because it's not on the website.
I know, it's frustrating, yeah.
I mean, just to
I think
us.
the reason
Just
for
to
that
us.
is that they try to have input to the planning board go be like on the record.
Yep.
And so what you can do is, and it probably is the right thing to do, is to send it to Jeremy and ask that it be forwarded to them, so that it makes sure it's however Jeremy
That's what I
feels it
thought,
needs to be part of the record, it will be.
Okay. All right, sounds good. So I think we already got our street tree program update, since I now know that we have 35 to 40 trees on tap for 2024. And I know that Brian is working with you or for you to try to get that spreadsheet put together and
Of the old.
well, yeah, just so that everything's tracked, and then, you know, if any new, like a form put together for any outreach or something, or leave at the table at the, you know, for anybody who's interested, that, you know, put it at the town office or something. And then he would put that into the spreadsheet as well, or let you know, or go out and paint, you know, put the dot on the map, so to speak, so.
Right, I think part of it was like validating what was on the GIS was real. I think, you know, like it wasn't cut down or.
Right, yes, and.
Because that was an old inventory that was
And,
imported into that.
And I've checked with Louisa regarding the emerald ash borer piece, and she has, not surprisingly, she has all the data, and she will share with.
We have it.
CAS, whoever, did you have the right data that it can it be populated with the, or updated?
Yeah, but it was
into
given
the-
to Aaron at CAI.
Okay,
But that's a good thing. I can check on where we stand on getting that into the system.
Yeah, because unfortunately, that particular pest is too close for comfort, so we should,
That particular what?
pest,
Pest.
the emerald ash borer is, you know, making its way slowly but surely in this direction, so we should have as much information
Right.
ahead of us.
Yeah, when it gets here, it could be a problem, but the other thing we should probably check on is that all of the fines and stuff for tree-related cutting, illicit cutting and all that, is supposed to be going towards a fund
Yeah. that's right.
for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the question should be asked, are those funds being.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Where's the line item on the
Right.
upcoming budget, so to speak?
Because that's really a contingency that we have a reserve fund for this emerald ash borer thing. If something happens, we have to go in and cut down all these trees and replant them, and, it's a lot of work to go through and do this. Some of these trees are between $500 to $2,000 to cut down a piece. So you start looking at the cost of something like this, and it's going to be really expensive.
So you can see here in an email that I sent to Aaron and Dave in 2022, January of 2022.
Beginning of 2022.
Yeah. But it had a link to all of that, and he said it was going to be no problem to put that in this is all of Louisa's stuff.
Okay.
And it was cool because it also identified specimen trees,
Nice.
like the ones that, should really be saved. And but I will follow up with that right now and see how we're doing.
So unless there's anything else on the street trees, the next item I had was the stormwater app and some monitoring. I just wanted to know if we wanted to do.
Well,
have
Allison
time
said
to
she'd hang around.
Yep, so let's just do that, and then we can kind of behind the scenes reach out and see who wants to buddy up or who wants to go out solo. But I think a refresher and or update on the app.
I never got it.
Okay, well, a crash course then. That's
More like it.
So until we have that, we won't be effectively adding any useful information. So the last meeting, the November meeting, moving on to Lake Beach Park, there was discussion on that particular piece of property, amongst others in town, but as being a, highly visible, often used both by locals and by visitors, and has a lot of potential erosion, a lot of water inflow, it's shoreline, there's a lot of layers and a lot of things that are happening there, and it's also could provide an interesting and unique opportunity to do some best practices in a public space that could be highlighted, both, on, web applications and just through general signage, with my design background and Pamela's design background, we said that we would put together at least a concept plan, if not a more detailed design, that with all the climate action funding and public support for that particular space, there's a lot of different ways that we could do a phasing, or sort of the upper portion within the horseshoe, if you will, within the around the street side, and then the steep sloped area as sort of what we call the phase 2 section, and do some really unique, permeable parking areas and some rain gardens. There's a pipe right in the middle that's not functioning as well as perhaps it could be. Maybe it's doing, maybe it's better than nothing, but maybe some rain garden. Yeah, it's small. It's a little exposed to the top. But it's a great space, and I think that it could be improved in a way that was both aesthetic and functional, and wouldn't be adding any additional burdens from a maintenance standpoint, because shrubs are over time a lot less maintenance than mowing lawns, and or dealing with dragging material back up because things are washing out because the grass simply isn't enough, vegetated material to hold the amount of flow that a lot of that particular Bayview section is getting, although the sides are getting quite a bit as well. So we went out yesterday and started jotting down ideas and looking a little more critically at spaces and places, and serendipitously, or just as these things go, one of our select board members who lives in the neighborhood happened to be out walking her dog, so she stopped and chatted us up, and it was great, though. She had her own perspective, both as a neighbor and as a walker and observer, and so we had lots of conversations, and I assured her this was simply an exercise in best practices and utilizing skill sets and having something ready to have a more serious conversation, or to put, if funding was in place or funding was available, that we had a conversation piece ready. And so she was very supportive, and it was good. But I did think of all the people who walked by. It was funny that was the one walking. It was like, oh, who might you be?
I'm not surprised. When I go there, I always see
And you could tell her that as part of it, you want to move the playground structure that is the boat.
We heard about that.
We already heard about the boat, and
That'll make her
honestly,
happy.
Yeah.
and honestly, the boat is sort of floating in the grass. It's a little disjointed, and I personally spent a lot of time there, either walking or bringing my own little friends and such. And I have seen more little people, like little people, barrel down that little slope, flat on their face, bounce off their chin, roll back up again. Now, thankfully, their center of gravity and their flexibility is such that they don't break anything like you or I would, and then back up, and then, one's trying to push, and then the other's like, I can't get down. So, I could see the need to move them a little closer together, but
There's a lot of things that are sort of disconnected.
Yeah.
And nice, but they're just all sort of randomly placed around the
But, yeah,
slope there.
but we could actually, improve parking, we could improve,
Runoff.
drainage and runoff and.
No
visual
walkway.
and-
So I'll, just so you guys know, I don't have any,
There's no monies.
I don't know, there isn't
No,
even about
there's-
money, I have no jurisdiction over that area.
Oh, yes, and now, I know there's a lot of conversations and a lot
Right.
of things to be,
That's the Parks and Rec Department, so
Yes. I know, and it's gonna be
you're,
low hanging fruit for
Well, we
a
could invite him
department
in.
with a
Right.
big, but I think if we really put together a plan and a package and explain it through
Right.
sort of best practice and explain it through climate resilience and explain it through,
That'll be
all of these
fine then,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, and then
it's not
say,
a problem,
here's
it's just that I'm not,
5
they're the
different
great people to
potential
talk to.
funding streams. Yeah, but let's so we'll do our bit, we'll work on it and we'll share with you guys, get feedback, because we've got different skill sets here as well, and then when we get a couple months in, we'll invite people over to have a chat with us or make a meeting separate that makes sense and share what we've been kind of putting together. So we did start.
Yes.
Great,
You guys remember the old tree that fell down?
I do.
So,
It's got a little whip in place now.
yeah, well, they had to plant a little one on the slope, but we'll
Yeah.
put a bigger one.
No, you wanted
up.
to get it established,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the old lumber, or the remnants of that tree
Oh.
were given to a processor, and he's milled out that wood and stuff, so we're gonna do something with that pretty soon.
Oh,
Nice.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So Pam, do you want to just ask some questions or share or see what next steps are with the planting bed or the signage by Hannaford? We talked
Oh,
about
I was
that.
looking at that,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, did you put the pumpkins up?
No, I thought you put the
did
pumpkins
that.
in.
No, I loved it. I know, I asked Barb too. I said, did you put the pumpkins?
Somebody did.
Figured it must have been you. There'll be pumpkins growing there next year.
I know.
They're just rotting away there.
That's okay.
It's fine,
Yeah.
yeah. No, Brian and I were gonna get together and go over there and sheet mulch that whole area to keep, because I've weed whacked it a couple of times. It just gets, in front and behind the whole granite structure around the sign, it just gets these tall weeds and
I was looking at that, I was wondering, not that I know the word terracing can be a little bit menacing to some, but I'm wondering if we should terrace that down one level and then give you a lower level around it.
What, are you talking about the Hannaford sign?
Yes, well, the Camden, welcome to Camden side.
Dave's passion project.
Well, no, I mean, it's just like,
Is it? No.
no, but
I was thinking I was driving you nuts.
it was
geez.
come a long way from what it was.
Yeah.
It was just this pile of weeds and like
Yeah.
scrub brush and it, so now.
Yeah, I notice it now, before I honestly didn't.
So Dave
Right.
decided to spruce it up on his own, but couldn't
Right.
get,
No.
the garden club was not,
It's
what?
too
No,
dangerous.
the garden club, a couple people said.
I'm risking my life.
Yeah, I had
He
some,
couldn't get other people to be as excited as
nobody
he
was
was.
excited, 'cause it wasn't like a fancy area in town, you know what I mean?
The garden club had, several people in the garden club had interest in sprucing up the area because it's near the sign, but the
No.
problem was, the problem is, just recently, this is the last meeting,
Oh, okay, I mean, I'm talking
There's a
like,
new regime in
I'm
place.
talking
It's totally new.
I'm talking before.
But it kind of was
More
slowed down
community
because
oriented.
there's no water, and watering things is a huge problem for us as it is, so, I mean,
We could put a rain barrel there for you guys,
well, okay, now what.
because that's a perfect place to
We'll
put a
meet
rain
again at the end
barrel.
of the month, but
With a little
that's
spigot on the bottom.
an idea.
We did that in Rockland,
Yeah.
One of those
no,
pumps, maybe we could have like a,
a little well.
yeah.
And, I mean, they're spending almost $9,000 a year in fundraising money to water things. So,
Yeah, I was really grateful that I put in those little plugs of native plants, and nothing really happened, because they're just so little this year, but I only had to water twice, and
I
then
thought
we
it was
had
good.
rain all
What did you say?
And-
We didn't lack for water
and
this year.
Yeah, ostensibly, if there are native plantings there, they're established.
Right.
They should maintain pretty well through drought and pouring rain and everything else that might get thrown at us. But yeah, so I collected, Rebecca helped me, she had a whole bunch of cardboard, and I had a whole bunch of cardboard, and Brian Lightbody and I were gonna go out and lay it all down and put some mulch
Around
down.
the area?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, because I feel like I was sort of rethinking the whole thing, thinking, the area inside your granite blocks is only like 4 by 4.
Mhm.
It would be really difficult to kind of create some sort of really.
Well, that's why I was
floral
thinking maybe we
display.
should like do another like round of like pieces of granite around the lower level of it
I think
and make it
Tony-
bigger.
I think we can just use the ground that's around it.
If you want to, that's okay. I'm
It's,
just,
you know,
I noticed, that was my thoughts on it, but
Yeah.
that's your baby. You've been given, that's yours.
Well, I was hoping to
I'm
get
gonna
a.
give you another one, the other one on the other side of town,
Where's that? Which one is
heading
that?
out of town in Lincolnville. That one's like,
Oh, right over by Great Brook.
it's leaning over and
Oh,
it's
Great Brook
really
Hall, yeah.
neglected.
Oh.
So we don't, I mean, it looks bad, and not that these things bother me, but, if,
No, it.
the welcome to
should
Camden
look
sign should kind of look, should be like crooked and
Shouldn't be
like.
like.
No.
There's really Camden starts at the library.
Yeah, right. It's like, we don't worry about the people coming south, we're only worrying about the people heading north,
Well, anyways, we failed in that because I emailed you and texted you a couple of times, and I understand you're probably pretty busy about picking up, you had told me once you had some mulch at the public.
Yeah, I have some
Yard
bags
there.
and stuff, yeah.
Just go over there
I
if
was
you
like,
can.
is it
You want me to
over
just
there?
drop 3-4 bags off for you?
Or like,
Well,
you
you
need
know,
like
actually,
15
no,
or.
can I make a suggestion, if you're just trying to like cover someplace up for future planting, is, what's his name, David Bragg in Warren or West Rockport,
Wood chips.
wood chips, very,
I've
very,
got
very.
a giant pile of wood chips at the house, not the house.
Where
My
Dave
house.
lives.
Yeah, where I live, the public works garage, like a giant pile of wood chips.
I mean,
works
those
too, but
those really,
enough.
if you can get, if you can get them to, try to put them there, and you put them there, I mean, you wouldn't be able to do much this year, but you could cover your whole thing with wood chips this year, and thick, I'm talking thick, and it wouldn't be a lot of money. And then let them decompose over this year. Next year, you can start planting.
But then you gotta take them all out,
No,
right?
you don't.
No,
They
let
just
them stay
disintegrate.
Yeah.
That's up to you.
And over the course, as the summer, they start out, they're yellowish, fresh. By fall, they're looking kind of brownish and just gonna blend in. And then the following year, they're largely decomposed.
Either way, if you could drop off a dump truck full of chips, or maybe not a huge truck, but like, or the bags, whichever you wanted to use or get rid of, it would probably.
Very
You
costly.
just need to
I
tell
would
me
think
what,
bags
I
would be saved for the landing and
mean,
other places that make more
yeah,
sense.
I like the wood chip idea, because I have those.
It's
That's
great.
fine, yeah, that's fine.
And they're
Are you
inexpensive.
okay, are you
Nice
okay with the
sustainable.
chips? You look like you don't like the chip idea too much.
No, but
It's not as pretty, but that's okay.
Well,
They
It
actually look,
works.
yeah, they actually look pretty
I mean,
good.
they were taking them on the terraced granite. Did you hear what the first offer was?
Well, the only thing I would say is, so I did a whole plan, obviously, because I was like, well, let's just put this could all be flowers
Mhm.
along, up to it, and then around it could be more seasonal type things,
Totally up to you.
Yeah.
I don't wanna
Because I
steal
was
you.
like, the pumpkins are great, that's really cool, I like that. But, floral stuff, but in any case, yeah, you know how it just sort of drops off, did
Right.
you guys build that riprap wall behind it as well?
So we built it at one point, but that was done by the contractors when they did the sidewalk. They put it back, and that's how they put it back together.
Yeah, because it's sort of level, but then it sort of drops down.
Drops off on the
and If it
backside.
was leveled up, that would be great, it would be a
Mhm.
bigger,
I have to look at it. I don't want to commit to something. I can't remember what the backside.
but
of it
but if not, it would work just as a slope, because there could be taller things planted back there, and,
Mhm.
yeah, it would.
Maybe
it
we
would
can look
work.
at
You
the
can
one on
use
the other end
plans
of
to-
town
Maybe a
too.
bench too. For people waiting for the,
No, the
Us.
bust. Yeah. Okay, anyways. Yeah,
So wood chips or something, and look at the
Yeah.
backside of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
get hold of Brian again. Well, everything's all-
In your travels, take a trip to Lincolnville and look at the sign on
I
there.
will.
Yeah, if you have
I've
any-
never even noticed it, obviously.
If you have some thoughts, it looks like it's looked like it's been lost in the,
isn't that the one Richard Bernhardt had to?
no, that was this one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had a problem with this one, because this one lacked, it was the same thing, it was like, this one was like this, and that one was like that, and I don't think we ever got to the other one at the other end of town, but I'm noticing coming, I don't go that way that often, so I was going out that way, I was coming back, I was like, this looks terrible.
But the Lincolnville one actually looks pretty good.
No, the Lincolnville one's crooked.
No, the one that says welcome to Lincolnville.
Oh, yeah, theirs is straight.
Yeah.
Ours is crooked.
Well, if the public works department can straighten it, then maybe you can do something.
Oh, I'm gonna straighten it, but I wanted to do a little bit more to it
Yeah.
too. Yeah, I agree.
We can do something.
I'm not
like
trying
that.
to get you guys to straighten the sign.
No, but we can make it look good underneath.
I just think it's kind of, those are the things that should look okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
At least be straight. Anyway.
Really would have been a
And
perfect
then
garden club
and then I don't
project.
know about the funding for, I think Rebecca, you had talked about how you know, grant sources and things, just to get the plants, more plants in there, maybe slightly bigger ones, in that area.
Yeah.
I
I think we can work together on
donations.
that too, yeah.
Yeah.
The tree budget,
Yeah, we have some money, but I mean, it'd be nice if is it unrealistic to think that we could plant some of that stuff ahead of time? Because you were talking about like starting, because you said you start a lot of these plants, right?
Well, not for public use, but,
For your own
I
garden
mean,
and stuff?
basically what I do is I try to keep things alive. What I do is work and keep things I've had growing in my yard. I keep, some go in the attic where it's freezing cold but sunny
Mhm.
and get water occasionally. Others go in the basement where it's steady,
Right.
50 and damp and has a grow light. And then some I have in my laundry room where.
So you're just
keep an eye on.
maintaining the stuff that you have? You're just
Yeah.
maintaining the stuff?
I
you
mean,
have.
so I can keep stuff from year to year that are don't normally grow around here or whatever.
Yeah, not as hardy.
I think we'll be okay. I mean, as long as it's not a huge amount of money. I mean, we have.
Well, if under a sign would be, you wouldn't want a tree, you want like I would think a bush.
Well, I'm not saying
ideally.
tree, whatever,
Yeah,
shrub or
like
something.
and a bush that looks good for a lifetime of the season, and then, and most bushes can do fine if they've been watered well the first year, and then after that, they kind of sort of on their own.
So Pamela, if you give me your plant list
Mhm.
and the numbers, I'll put together a wholesale based order, and then, through the district, we could probably come up with a moderate add-on, so to speak, for the time, and people like, we'll figure out a way to make it reasonable.
Yeah, that sounds great, thanks, Rebecca. And did you want to put a small tree behind the sign, or a small flowering tree?
I'm leaving all the creativity of that area to you. You just let me know what you want.
but in terms of the budget,
We have that in our
we can
budget.
come up with the budget, I don't know how much you're talking about,
Not much.
It's not huge.
but it shouldn't have to be like the soil and water district, like footing the bill, or the
No,
township.
not necessarily putting the.
She's
I'm
talking about
saying
getting the
that-
plants.
Okay.
Getting the plants, sourcing the plants, and then with a reasonable markup,
Oh, then selling them to us.
Yeah, but, because I have a wholesale license, so I can access all, plugs, seeds, full-grown trees, so to speak. So I'm just saying that it would be a way to leverage.
As long as I was just trying to think of all the things that we possibly need to be asking for in the budget, is my angle here of,
Yeah, the sooner you give me the,
like, if we have people that are willing to do all this work and stuff, it's not that hard to get stuff in the budget, or just to, I don't know if we've been maxing out the existing tree budget or not, and it's actually good to make sure that, like, we have projects that we can say we need these lines for, so that they become.
This year's been tough, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask, are you thinking before the January 25th meeting? Is that
kind of, sort of, is
Yeah.
that?
just for my own clarification?
And you don't, it's gonna be, supposedly they're gonna be sending something out to the committee chairs about this. I don't know what the exact format of the meeting is gonna be. It's not gonna be like you have to have every detail or whatever, but just, and especially if you can say, like, existing lines in the budget that you want to be increased or maintained.
So like this year was particularly hard on the budget because of that storm that we had that knocked down all those trees. So we absorbed a lot of costs removing down trees.
From the tree planting budget?
Well, there's two lines in the tree budget. There's the tree planting budget, but then there's the tree maintenance budget, which used to be the tree cutting budget.
Yeah.
And
I
now,
like it says maintenance instead of cutting now. That's-
We're working on it.
well, yeah, right, but sometimes that
And cutting is.
line I use for, replacing trees too. if I have to. But that doesn't have any fluff, not fluff, but no room for anything anymore because we had so many trees that had to be removed.
Okay, so making sure that that budget is.
Right, we don't want to lose that, what we have in there, because it's like you were talking about, you have to have a little bit of room in there in case you have an event that causes some kind of repairs of something. The tree is the same thing, I mean, you can have a year where all your trees get knocked down because of a huge windstorm, and it just gets obliterated right at the get-go. Then you have other years where it doesn't get spent as much, and then those are years where you want to prune trees and shape them and do different things like that, maybe replace trees.
Okay, so Emma and I will work at getting an actual plant list and accompanying budget in the short-ish term. We already got the peer moratorium update. And in case it wasn't explicitly clear, Barb and I went to the meeting, the planning board meeting where they're talking about the peer moratorium, and Jeremy stated very clearly that his recommendation and would be to extend the moratorium another 180 days, given that the planning board is actively addressing these concerns but hasn't finalized any of these specific items that were part of the moratorium. So I think it's a win-win, and I think the Conservation Commission should commend the planning board for the work that they've been doing to really look very clearly and succinctly at the concerns and at improving the zoning and the guidelines around peers going forward.
At our last meeting, we talked about sending the planning board
an updated letter
with
Yeah.
incorporating things that changed since
Yep,
then. And
right.
I think that's something that would be really smart for us to do really soon.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
And
point.
it was interesting, I thought, with the meeting, because the room was pretty full, and then we had two major agenda items on there. One was this, and then the other was
Short-term rental.
rentals. And at one point, I forget, Ethan, I think, said, I assume a lot of people are hearing about the peers. It's like me and Rebecca. Everyone else there was for short-term rentals. And it was like, I was like, oh, he's like, so who would like to speak? I'm going to give someone a turn. Nobody raised their hand. And I was like, okay, fine. I was the only one. So it was pretty interesting, I thought. So.
Right, because that particular meeting is when a bunch of people with short-term rentals kind of became aware that that was a topic of conversation.
But I just still, it was interesting.
I think it can also be said that a lot of conversation has been had and a lot of public input has been had, and I think that there's at the moment there's no major change. There's discussion about what to do, but there was a consensus to raise the peers, to do the additional peers, like that was voted on favorably, and like Jeremy said, we're working towards that next, towards finalizing this sort of piece. And so the logical thing is to just stay calm and carry on and keep the moratorium in place until the planning board has succinctly, answered these questions and come up with a solid plan. So I think, perhaps that's part of it, is that sort of the earlier concerns and conversations have been raised, and now we're kind of honing in the nitty-gritty.
Right, yeah, most people aren't thinking anymore like that's the time to give input, like they've sent an email back at some point or whatever.
And then, the next thing
Very
will come
hard
up
to
for
follow.
vote, and then people will have an opinion, with their pen. So, the last items on the agenda was,
So can I just?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Wait a minute. So does somebody want to write a letter that we could
have
all?
a letter floating around out there that
Is
just
there
probably
an
needs to be
updated?
updated.
Yes, that's what we talked about.
Okay, and then we can all sign on to that and forward it over to.
We need to kind of revise it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
I did send something to the planning board that right ahead of that meeting that I can forward to, that has
Just a little.
That would be good.
had some stuff in it. But if we were, it might make sense to be kind of specific about about a few things that
Yeah.
they're trying to thread the needle legally a little bit, was the impression I got, and making, a lot of it is just making sure that they have reasons for what they're doing that can be pointed to, like, or, criteria. I think, there's a difference between flat out bans a little bit and creating criteria that prohibit things sort of by default. And so, like in the past, it's been 300 feet from an existing pier. And that's been deemed to be okay to do that. But there's been nothing in the ordinance that says the setback from a, public access point or anything like that. And so if the conservation.
One thing I wondered about last time with, I think I floated it in an email, is couldn't they include the surface area of the piers in the total developed surface area of the property? And so that would, like you can only develop X% of your property or what lot coverage area, right? A lot of these houses are built to the maximum lot coverage area. So if we included the pier in the maximum lot coverage area for any future piers, that could potentially, obviously it's not on their lot, but that goes to the point that they're on a public, they're putting their pier on public property. So it should either not be allowed, or if you want to treat it as your private thing, then it should be counted as part of your lot coverage.
It's a good point.
I don't think that our restrictions for lot coverage are as robust as, I'm not sure that.
It doesn't cover it. I read it. It doesn't. I'm saying they could change that as a way to, at least in part, address future pier applications.
I just don't know that we have a maximum percentage of lot coverage.
Oh, definitely do. I couldn't do some things I wanted to do because of it. We definitely do.
In the coastal residential zone?
Yeah, at my house, and I think I'm in the coastal residential zone. I'm not shoreline.
Yeah.
I'm in the shoreline zone halfway, but I'm not a waterfront property. But there's definitely a maximum percentage of area you can develop on your property, on just like square footage.
Okay, that's
but
interesting.
the pier wouldn't at this time be included in it, but we could just, that's just a proposal, would be to expressly include that in lot coverage, and that could potentially restrict some development.
Yeah, it can't hurt, although I think we should be going for a much, I wouldn't want to inadvertently say that we think it's okay in places where they haven't maxed out their lot coverage, but.
Oh no, it would just be yet another restriction.
Yeah, doesn't hurt.
It's just that it's a way to do it where you're not saying it's an all-out ban,
right.
But here are some different ways to approach it that would potentially eliminate future piers.
Yeah.
It would be like in the toolkit, not the silver bullet, in the toolkit.
And make them further away from each other.
That's interesting that that's not included now. Huh. That's just crazy. They don't pay taxes on that part of the property either. They do on the pier, but not on the, the they don't pay taxes to the low water mark, which they say, it's technically private property owners mostly own to the low water mark, but the taxes that they pay are only to the high water mark.
So it says that they own to the low water, but it's not included in their, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, no.
Well, there's an issue with it because they didn't used to own it. They don't own it. They didn't used to have the ability to exclude people from it until there was a state Supreme Court case like 20 years ago that said, oh, actually you do have control to the low water mark. It's this, there's this whole beach down at Moody's Beach or something south in the state. And somebody is actually trying to challenge that, really mount a challenge to get public access back on the intertidal area.
Yeah,
and I've been following that. I'm very curious how that'll turn out. So right now, waterfront owners do have exclusionary privileges to the low water mark,
but
it's not a true property right of ownership. It's a strange construct.
Right.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I'm gonna push forward.
So can you start resurrect the letter and send it to us? We can all add things to it. Would you
As long
mind?
as you're not in a hurry.
Well, we have to do it for.
My computer is about to die.
Do you don't have?
I
that
do,
plugged
but,
in?
I mean,
Oh,
I can do it. Yeah.
No, well, yeah, I'm just saying, like, my agenda is, I've got some things that have to be done, so I won't even consider looking at or starting it until middle or end of next week, so
I mean,
that's the.
I would be happy to help somebody with it or do it. I don't know how
I see.
appropriate that is. Basically already written it.
So the last thing on the agenda is just to quickly highlight or mention outreach opportunities. I think I'm gonna rush over the website thing because that's a perpetual problem.
But we talk about it almost every week,
But Brian doesn't
and
have,
Brian
have like
we have
a
a
zero.
plan and it's not gonna work, no one's working on it.
I can actually give a little update.
Okay, great.
So Brian and I tried to meet, and the holidays sort of like usurped his entire, it's fine, we're gonna meet a different time, but we did check in a little bit. And if your computer is working, I can, or not.
It is, I just got it plugged in.
But basically, I clarified with Allison that we would not have, there were sort of two options floated. One was like, do what the Snowball did and secretly make your own, and then you have control and all that. But, or we can ask, I guess, Janice or whoever is willing to make updates to update the page that we have, right? Those were sort of the two ideas that were floated. So it seems.
Do you want me to pull up something?
Well, so if you pull up the town website and you go to the committee.
Yeah, let me share my screen so that.
Yeah. Yeah, so on the left side were all of the boards and committees. And if you just pull up the Opera House.
Oh. I don't know why that didn't create a drop-down menu there, hold on. The Opera House?
Yeah, I tried to find one where like, it just was simple and had an easy, they have like a nice, I think you call it a hero at the top, that image. We could do that or not, sort of optional, but they have just an easy layout here. We could do this, and we could also incorporate some other, I don't know, suggestions about important work that we've done, and maybe things that we're working on.
You don't like you like the Opera House one better than the Conservation Commission?
I was just trying to find another committee that had like some of the relevant information that we would want. It was just kind of cleaner, I guess. It looked a little cleaner to me. It was just like a little organized. And I was trying to work within like what seems possible. So they have like a couple visuals on there.
Oh, you can
Yeah.
make it, more than.
Yeah.
There's also the Public Works. Did you look at that one?
I don't know. I sort of poked around a little bit. I don't
You
know.
can like make it a little bit more like, we want to have this image and this image and these links, and so there's.
Oh, it needs to be updated, so.
Yeah.
They have a bunch of stuff.
I think it's cleaner from I want to say purely political standpoint, but like to have additional information and images, or, even if it's not the end all be all of what we'd love it to be, but to keep it, with the town website.
I agree. I mean, unless there's like a surge of excitement, and it's the type of thing where it's like, well, yeah, we like really want to manage our own website. I don't know.
I mean,
There's
there's a
like
link to all of the different things we
If
do.
we're doing a special project that, for a short term, and then we still are candid and make sure that, you know, either Allison or, you know, Janice or somebody within the town structure has access to it as well, and so it's still that transparency and that connectivity, and but if, yeah, there was a particular small project that we were driving extra attention to, or capital you know, or it had like a time, you know, a 3-year project timeline, then I could see where we have a separate. But I think otherwise, in general, I mean, I can understand why people would want to do it, but I don't. But we're not an advisory, like, we're not a separate entity, like, we are part of the town structure, so I think we should.
I mean, and like, so the Opera House Committee, they have like these little, they have little stuff
since 2019, but I that's the only reason I'm laughing with the Opera House Committee being the Xenophobia.
Well, they had this little sub-menu, which was like, you know, here are the minutes, here, I was like, okay, there's like a little bit of, I'm not looking really at content, we're looking at like.
Right.
We're talking about wireframes, like.
The layout.
Yeah, the layout of what we would include. I was like, okay, a couple of visuals, whatever, like anyway. So, and then I think after that, there's like, what do we want to include? What content do we feel like belongs up here? And I think like an interesting piece of information that would be like low-hanging fruit is like, what has been done already? For example, I didn't know the electric bus was, right? I mean, that was like a part of the relationship with the school.
Though, that's the energy committee or whatever, sustainability committee.
Okay, well, so and like, what are we working on? I don't know, I think that there's some.
Well, I think the things that we talked about right now was protecting our shoreline,
Protecting the harbor.
Protecting the harbor.
Harbor shoreline.
Yeah.
Well, we could get our
36
minutes
trees
up
that
there.
were planted this year, you know.
Resilient infrastructure, things to prevent flooding, to protect our environment.
Yeah, clean your catch basin, you know, like.
Public awareness of
Yeah.
environmental issues, I think, is some.
As well as like the things like Emerald Ash Borer and the beach leaf, all those things we could have, you know.
Yeah.
It looks like our minutes are on, like they're on there for 2022.
Not there.
And then not for 2023. That's just asking Janice to, because we send them.
Yeah, she gets them.
So.
Right.
Right, I mean, we can just keep going with this, like we have water quality reports, but there could be other, as we do other projects, there could be.
Yeah, or maybe creating a part that's like from the archives, you know, I mean, that some of it's older and maybe it's still relevant, but, you know, explaining why it's still relevant. I think basically a part of this is like designating upkeep.
If we can put as much as we can all at one time into this one upload with a few photos, and then we can, maybe one person maybe be in charge, what things will we want to change over the course of time and not be constantly bugging them, but.
Yeah, I think once a year, I think.
Twice a year, we could say.
Once, maybe twice a year.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's just real, I mean, it sounds like, oh, it's not that much, but it's tedious behind the scenes and.
But if we get a really well organized, one big upload and change, and then maybe in 6 months.
Yeah.
And like only you or Brian or one of you or something is the person who is the contact.
Right, do we have like contact information for?
I don't think everyone's up there anymore.
No, the membership is out of date, which I noticed because I, you know,
Because you're not on there.
I'm here now. Which is kind of, it's fine. I'm not upset about it. But yeah, I mean, I guess like for me, especially as a new member, I'm like, I feel a little like I'm still getting read in about like what projects we work on, and like, I don't know, do we start at the beginning of the year setting an agenda or like a roadmap? Like those are still things that I don't know yet. So in terms of developing content, like I would be happy to be the person who was like, hey Janice, like here's our update. But I don't know what the update is yet.
Following up on some, because like last month we talked about lots of different things we wanted to do. I could pull those things together and send them to us, things we talked about that we're gonna do this winter, it's January, and just as some bullet points, and just send them up to you, so that we can like, realistic, no, I don't know about that. We also, we elaborated on this, or whatever, and just see where we're at, because I put up the holidays, and I did 2 minutes right away, and once I started doing them, I was thinking, oh, I should have done this.
Yeah.
Well,
weeks ago.
We really do all these things.
What?
Yeah, or even like designating one meeting, like February or March, like bring your headlines, and then, we're gonna update the site in March and
Right.
bring your headlines by then. If you don't, then, it'll go for 6 months, why not? So maybe that's also.
I think I'll add it to the February agenda, let's give it a little time. Lord,
I mean, there is just a lot of stuff that's already been done that just should be on there,
yeah.
like links to this and.
So that would be my suggested homework assignment, is let's just, everybody bring their short list, their list of
Of stuff that
five
goes on the
things that
website.
goes on the website. I'm sure that 3 out of 5 will be, everybody will say the same thing, and that's good, because that means we're saying the right thing. And then we'll go, and then we'll prioritize what makes sense, or, and put the more complete list together, email, we can put it, and then it'll be in the minutes, and then we'll politely pass it off to you.
I'm happy to have it passed off.
And, but I think that's great.
No, I think you're right, having somebody that just is the point of contact that goes to Janice and says, hey, this is what we'd like to put on the website, she's gonna do it.
And here's like.
Oh, yeah, Samantha already proved herself very capable of doing that. And a great email to Janice.
Yeah.
and
I think it just
select board.
needs to be something she needs to be, reminded of, because she's
Yeah.
got quite a bit going on, so.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. So I only have the outreach, just the reminder that we've got a trifold that Pamela did that we can print for upcoming events. That's great. And then we have 2 events that we attended last year, and we don't have to talk about it anymore, but other than to say that it's on the list. And I think we've had people tentatively suggest that they would be willing to be there for this coming year for the Sea Fair and the Wild Ones Native Plant Sale. That makes sense because it's in town and they support, it's in alignment with the stuff that we're doing. So
I think I already committed us.
we actually have dates for those, but I didn't have them on me, so I will put it on and just put it out there for the February agenda. So I have more, but it's not necessary for this week, or this month rather, so.
I'm so sorry, I have to get back to
Work?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I have other work. This is part of work. This is, I have other work too, so it's okay.
So we're going to stick with this first week, Wednesday in February, which I personally like. The next-
So are we trying to do a switch? Is that what we're saying here?
I don't mind.
Oh,
I don't, because I'm,
What do you want?
so the first
The last-
Wednesday, is that what you're?
Well, the last Wednesday would be the 24th of this month, or the first, and I have started a couple things on that day, but I could, that's all right, we move around. And then the first Wednesday would be February 7th.
So what's the
What would you
proposal?
like?
did you already, make arrangements, Samantha,
Right.
for a certain
Yeah, what's
time?
your-
I did, but
What's Are you flexible?
if it, not on the day, perhaps the week though, if it were like Wednesday, but a different.
Yeah, I think the suggestion is we're trying to avoid some of these like holiday and other hiccups that we
Yeah.
continually have come across, not realizing it when we originally set it up, so.
So sticking with Wednesday,
The
but
first Wednesday from 12 to 2 works most every month, I would say. For me, 1 is always going to be a problem because it's May, and May is always a problem, so.
But can you do the first week?
I think so. I'll be honest with you, if I'm not looking at my calendar, it just,
Okay.
boop, 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 it goes away.
Well,
I would be happy to look at my calendar just to confirm. I want to say that that's fine, but I.
Okay, I'm gonna take down minutes,
Let's
but if you have a problem, I'm
Put
just gonna see.
put tentative,
Okay.
Is that okay?
yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
And we'll kind of go from there, because then the only other real conflict, that's an actual real conflict across the board, would be 4th of July, and that's not always gonna be the case, it just happens that it
Occasionally.
will overlap in this coming year, so, oh well. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
So are we saying our next meeting's Wednesday, February 7th?
Tentatively.
Okay, okay. Cool.
But it will be confirmed,
Yeah,
The first
Oh, am I
one's-
still sharing my?
the 7th, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay.
All right,
That in here too.
thank you, guys.
All right.
so
It
are we deleting it was the last,
was the last Wednesday of the month.
so I'm gonna just change that one.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Barb, I just had a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Are we off?
Yeah.
Hold on.